Good morning. It's Sunday, March 9th, and I've been reading a few articles lately about how Trump is considering Canada to be possibly the 51st state. And while many are not taking that seriously, I believe that he is deadly serious in his thinking about that. Even though it might be slightly misguided, I don't even know if the guy's ever been to Canada. I've been to Canada several times. In fact, there was one period, one summer, when I was up visiting my grandchildren in Seattle, which is a short hop from Vancouver, Canada. So we went over the border to Vancouver, spent a few days there, and then took a cruise from Vancouver to Alaska. And it was a beautiful trip up the western coast, and we saw many interesting things, although right now I can't remember a heck of a lot. This was a long time ago. But that's beautiful country, so I can understand why President Trump would want to take over Canada and change some of the borders, of course. And he's talking about changing the shared water agreements that we have with Canada. I didn't even know we had shared water agreements. But it's obvious when you consider the Great Lakes, which are right on the border between us and Canada. And it all depends on how you look at the Great Lakes, but a portion of them are in Canada now, and a portion of them are in the United States. So Trump wants to change the borderline, and that's a very tricky thing. You're talking about water, you're talking about things that are not straightforward. So how do you mark a change in a border when you've got a big lake in the middle of it, or several lakes? Because you know what's up there, you know what those lakes are called. They're the Great Lakes, Lake Huron and those. So how would you change the borders? What kind of lines can you use? I guess you could put a pole on the edge of each lake to indicate something. But why? Why would we want to go to that extent? Why do we want to mess with our border with Canada? To me, that seems like something that's not worthwhile. If we want to take the country over, who cares about the border right now? Concentrate on that. Concentrate on taking over, if that's what you really, really want to do. But when you look at the U.S.-Canadian border, it's a wilderness. So how do you mark it? There's a sign that says this is the border. Somebody could come along and move that sign and nobody would know the difference. So maybe that's why Trump wants to get the border marked more explicitly. He told Mr. Trudeau that he did not believe that the treaty that creates the border between the two countries was valid, and he wants to revise the boundary. But he didn't explain anything beyond that, because if he had to explain it, that would mean that he would have to know how to do that. He would have to know how to mark it and how to do all of that stuff. And that that is beyond Trump's expertise. So we were smart enough not to get into the particulars of how you would change the border. But Mr. Trump referred to this border treaty, which was established in 1908 and was finalized as the international boundary between Canada and the U.S. at a time which Canada wasn't even Canada. It was a British dominion. So at that point, they created the border. So when they became a country, did that change the markings? I don't think so. So Trump also mentioned revisiting the sharing of the lakes and the rivers between the two nations. And those are marked and regulated by a number of treaties. And he has expressed an interest in possibly changing those treaties. He's talked about this in the past. Now, the Canadian officials are taking Trump's comments very seriously because he had already publicly stated that he wanted to bring Canada to its knees. Trump said he would use economic force, and he did so. And this week, U.S. tariffs came into effect after they had been reprieved a while ago. And Canada in return imposed its own tariffs on the U.S. Now we have two friendly nations in a trade war. But the other day, Trump granted Canada a suspension on most of the tariffs. This is a mishmash that's going on. I don't know how it's going to end, but it seems to me that Trump has to agitate to make his life meaningful. Why can't he just be a straight-out friendly nation, sit down with the people of Canada, and discuss what he'd like to do? I know one of the things that bothers him is the treatment of the U.S. with respect to the Canadian milk supply. Canada has a lot of cows that supply milk, and there's some problem between the U.S. and Canada with that whole milk supply. So why can't they just sit down and talk about that? Maybe Canada will loan us a couple of cows or something. Anyhow, it's a mixed bag of what I will call minor problems that Trump, in his mind, creates a major issue out of them. And the Canadians are not being very helpful either. So I leave you with that. Two great nations that should be working much closer together. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.